Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take that fire hose of information, all your articles, your notes, your research, and just distill it down to that pure, concentrated espresso shot of knowledge you need. And today, our mission is, well, it's about more than just learning new words. It's about getting an instant, really noticeable boost in sophistication. We're here to help you get rid of maybe the weakest, most overused, and, let's be honest, the most boring phrase in your vocabulary, which is I think. So whether you're prepping for a big meeting, you're writing an academic essay, maybe you're in a debate, or you're just tired of saying it all the time, this deep dive is absolutely for you. We've pulled 21 incredible, powerful, and really advanced alternatives. They range from super casual texting abbreviations all the way up to these rock-solid formal statements. Our goal is to show you exactly how to swap out "I think" and just sound instantly more polished, more articulate, and way more precise.
Yeah, and this goes so much further than just, simple substitution. What's really fascinating here is that getting that advanced vocabulary, it's not just about finding a synonym. It's about demanding precision from yourself. When you decide to move beyond "I think," you're basically forcing yourself to define the nature of your opinion. Are you stating what you think is a fact?
Right.
Are you expressing a deeply held belief? Or are you just offering, a tentative observation based on what you saw? These 21 alternatives give you that nuance, and embracing that nuance is, well, it's the bedrock of critical thinking, really.
I couldn't agree more. It's all about framing your thoughts, giving them context for your audience. Now, to make sure these 21 phrases actually stick in your brain, because, knowledge is only useful if you can remember it under pressure, the sources we looked at use this magnificent, totally ridiculous running story to illustrate every single example.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's such a great pedagogical approach. They anchored all 21 of these alternatives to the same chaotic, escalating narrative.
The saga of the disgruntled ex.
Yes. The saga of a deeply disgruntled, uninvited ex-partner who crashes a wedding and just proceeds to cause escalating mayhem. And in doing so, they give us this clear, unforgettable event for every single linguistic point.
It's a masterclass in making grammar memorable, honestly.
Yeah.
And we are going to follow that disaster from the very first insult all the way to the, let's just say, the final consequences. Okay, so we're jumping right in, starting where most communication actually happens these days. The informal, the quick, the conversational. These are the phrases perfect for, social media, friendly chats, quick messages, where being candid is what matters.
Right, and these informal openers, they set a tone of immediate openness. They kind of signal that what's coming next is raw, it's candid, maybe even a slight overshare. And that's a huge part of building rapport in a casual chat.
Okay, so our first nugget is, it's everywhere in the digital world. You see it constantly. I'm not going to lie.
Or even more common?
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. That contraction gane is just standard for how people actually speak.
Yeah.
It's a key marker of informal speech. But, and we have to stress this, you say it, you don't write it in a formal context. Ever.
And if you're texting, you don't even need that. Our source highlights this phrase gets boiled down to just 3 letters. NGL.
NGL.
Just NGL, and then you drop your judgment. So, bringing in our disgruntled wedding crasher right out of the gate, she uses this for her first emotional reaction, she says. NGL, I was pretty insulted to not be invited to my ex-boyfriend's wedding.
And that simple NGL, it does so much heavy lifting. It immediately establishes her mindset as honest, a little hurt, definitely candid. If she had just said, I think I was insulted, it sounds defensive.
It does, yeah.
But NGL implies, look, I'm going to be straight with you, even if this makes me sound petty.
Yeah.
It communicates a vulnerability that I think just completely misses.
Right. Moving on, we have a close cousin. Carries the same sort of truthful weight, but it's a little less slangy, in all honesty.
This one has become incredibly common, especially when someone's about to say something that might be a bit controversial or just unexpected. It signals candor, but it's definitely on the informal side. You wouldn't use it in a shareholder meeting.
No. And our protagonist uses it right after the initial insult to justify the disastrous decision that follows. She says, in all honesty, I had every right to be there.
And see what she's doing. She's not just stating an opinion. She's presenting her decision to go to the wedding as an incontrovertible truth, at least in her own mind.
A moral framework.
Exactly. It moves her from being slightly hurt to being self-righteous and convicted. She's ready to deliver her justification, no apologies.
And finally, in this opening informal section, we have a phrase that comes with a very specific and I think charming geographic accent, I reckon.
Indeed. Yeah, our source material was very clear on this. I reckon is distinctly British and Australian. North Americans understand it, of course, but it's overwhelmingly used in the UK as a simple, very informal replacement for I think or I suppose.
It's short, it's punchy, and it perfectly sums up the rapidly deteriorating mental state of our protagonist. The example, I reckon the sixth gin and tonic tipped me over the edge.
Now, that phrase, that requires a little deep dive all on its own because it is packed with meaning.
Right.
To tip someone over the edge is a powerful, very common idiom. It's when one final small thing causes a total collapse, either into sadness or, in this case, into total craziness, or, as the British would say, losing the plot.
I want to focus on that. What does tipped suggest that just saying made me drunk doesn't?
It suggests a transition, a sudden one,
Yeah.
from a stable state to a completely unstable one. It's like a tipping point in physics, you know?
Yeah.
Everything was fine, or fine-ish, until that sixth drink. That was the catalyst. She wasn't just tipsy anymore. That drink triggered a genuine loss of emotional and behavioral control. It summarizes that whole slide into disaster with incredible economy.
It's a wonderful verbal shortcut.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've covered the modern slang of NGL, the general honesty of in all honesty, and the very British I reckon.
Yeah.
Already you can communicate tone and perspective so much more effectively. Okay, we're shifting gears a bit now, moving toward that flexible middle ground. Phrases that are neither super formal nor pure slang. These are precise because they focus on framing the opinion as a personal perspective.
And they're so useful in settings where you need to be clear, but also subtly acknowledge that other viewpoints exist. They overtly frame what you're about to say as just your take on it. It kind of hedges against sounding too absolute.
Starting with number 4, we have, if you ask me.
This is a polite, really straightforward way of framing an opinion as either solicited advice or an important observation. It often carries the slight implication that the speaker has some superior insight.
Right, even if no one actually asked them.
Exactly. You're subtly suggesting, if you want the real answer, here it is.
And our wedding crasher delivers her first unsolicited judgment on the proceedings. If you ask me, the church service was wonderful, but it was a shame I had to stand at the back.
See how she gives that qualified compliment? The service was wonderful, but then she immediately brings the focus back to herself. It's all about her perceived insult of being in the cheap seats. It's an observation presented as a judgment.
Next, we have 2 phrases that sound really similar but have very different implications. Let's start with, as far as I can tell.
This is a crucial distinction. When you use, as far as I can tell, you're suggesting your opinion is based on observable evidence, but you're also admitting your perspective is limited.
Okay.
You're basically saying, based on the evidence I have right now, without the full picture, this is what I conclude. It suggests a bit of uncertainty, like a detective gathering cruise.
And our disgruntled ex, our detective of chaos, provides her observational conclusion. As far as I can tell, the bride wasn't really expecting me.
That is pure observation. Her conclusion is drawn from visible data. Maybe the bride's jaw hit the floor, or she paused mid-vow. The use of can tell restricts the judgment to her immediate, limited perception of the scene.
Now contrast that with the next nugget, number 6. As far as I'm concerned.
So much stronger. As far as I'm concerned, moves away from observation and implies finality. You're saying, this is my definitive personal judgment, and frankly, I don't care what anyone else thinks.
It's like drawing a line in the sand.
A very hard line. For the speaker, this is the non-negotiable conclusion. It's often used when you're frustrated and you want to shut down any further debate.
And our wedding crasher is definitely frustrated. She uses this phrase to deliver her most uncharitable judgment yet. As far as I'm concerned, she totally overreacted and shouldn't have cried.
There is zero uncertainty there. That is a judgment delivered with full, unapologetic conviction. The language shifts from that tentative, I can tell, to the self-assured, I'm concerned, and it dramatically changes the personality of the speaker. She sounds less like an observer and more like a harsh judge.
And what about this simpler, but still really effective to me?
This is maybe the most direct replacement for it, in my opinion. It doesn't add any formality or nuance of observation. It just centers the viewpoint on you, the speaker, and your experience.
Our example here, she uses it to claim superior authority over the whole day. To me, no one knows my ex better than I do, so I should have been able to tell all of his funny stories.
She's anchoring her sense of entitlement in her intimate knowledge of the groom. It's a simple phrase, to me. But in this context, it's just loaded with self-justification for all the chaos that's about to happen.
Okay, we've handled casual and neutral. Now we're moving into the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
These are the phrases for structured presentations, academic essays, formal reports, anywhere you need to sound analytical and authoritative. They just instantly elevate the language you're using.
And they signal to your audience that your opinion is the result of careful thought, of intellectual engagement, even if, in the case of our wedding crasher, that thought process is completely biased.
Let's start with a classic pair, both referencing the speaker's mind, in my view, and the more intense, to my mind.
In my view, is professional, a bit formal, a great way of saying, in my opinion. It's very versatile. To my mind, though, it's subtly different, and this is where advanced learners really need to pay attention.
So how does referencing the mind change the weight of it compared to just a view?
When you say to my mind, you are specifically referencing your intellectual process, your brain's ability to analyze, not just your general perspective. It strongly implies a conclusion you reached after serious thought or reviewing data.
Ah, I see.
So if you're delivering a conclusion after looking at a complex spreadsheet, you'd say, to my mind. If you're just giving a general opinion on the market, you might use, in my view. The first one suggests a deeper, more calculated synthesis.
That's a crucial distinction. It's the difference between a general statement and a deliberate intellectual conclusion.
Yeah.
But how do you use a phrase like to my mind without sounding, arrogant?
Great question. It's all about context. In an academic or business setting, the formality of it actually shows respect for the complexity of the issue. You're saying, after processing this information, this is the conclusion my intellect drew. You avoid arrogance by making sure the statement that follows is logically sound. It's about elevating the argument, not yourself.
Let's see, the X use both. First, the general formal defense. In my view, I should have been invited, so it was totally fair for me to turn up on the day. And then, the more cerebral justification for the bride's cold shoulder. To my mind, she should have been happier to see me and receive my support.
She's rigorously processed the situation, through her own warped lens, of course, and concluded that her presence was a logical, supportive act.
Moving on to number 9, from my point of view. This one feels a little more flexible than the others in this formal group.
It is. It's fundamentally formal, but it's often used in less rigid settings to define your specific position in a debate. You're staking out your territory, so to speak.
And here is where our X goes from just being there to actively intervening. From my point of view, the first dance was cringeworthy, so I did everyone a favor by joining in. We have to stop here. We have to emphasize how bad this is, especially at a UK wedding. The first dance it's sacred. It's this highly watched moment. The couple dances alone to their special song.
Yes. Culturally, it's one of the emotional centerpieces of the whole day. The etiquette is absolutely rigid. You do not join them, not until they're done, or they specifically invite everyone else to join in.
So for her to join in early, and you just know she's swaying drunkenly between them, it shows a complete disregard for custom. But by using, from my point of view, she frames this huge social crime as a thoughtful, reasoned intervention.
Exactly. She sees herself as an arbiter of taste, not a crasher. She's using a formal framing device to justify completely unhinged behavior.
Which leads us to our final and strongest formal alternatives in this section. It is my view that, or is my belief that.
These are highly declarative. They're the academic equivalent of throwing down a gauntlet. They set up a full clause and are used almost exclusively to launch a core argument in an essay, a formal speech, a legal brief, no ambiguity.
And our X uses this powerful structure to blame external forces for her escalating mayhem. It is my view that the open bar made everything worse.
Okay, another cultural deep dive is required here, specifically on the significance of a British wedding open bar.
Right. In the UK, an open bar is a massive gesture of generosity. It means the bar is completely prepaid, guests drink for free all night. It's a sign of a high-budget wedding.
And this is significant because it is not guaranteed. Our source material notes it's only in about 30% of UK weddings, with most being cash bars. And while traditionally the bride's parents paid for the wedding, now it's usually the couple themselves funding this expensive feature.
So the X is blaming the single most generous, happiness-inducing feature of the wedding, the free booze, for her bad decisions.
It's the ultimate act of cognitive dissonance. She uses the highest formal language, it is my view that, to express a completely unhinged conclusion that shifts all the blame onto the generosity of her ex and his new wife.
We're continuing our deep dive, focusing now on alternatives that cluster around different kinds of mental engagement. observation with C, analysis with consider, or judgment with seems.
This section introduces phrases that explicitly imply a process. The speaker is signaling that they haven't just reacted. They're actively processing what they see or analyzing the context to reach their conclusion.
Starting with observation, we have two variations that are basically interchangeable. The way I see things, or the shorter, cleaner, as I see it.
Both are rooted in visual or sensory perception. The speaker is essentially saying, this is my interpretation of the observable reality. They're defining their reality.
Our X uses the longer version for her delusional self-assessment. The way I see things, I made the family photographs a lot more interesting. And she uses the shorter version to address a clear offense she noticed in the dinner planning. As I see it, they obviously didn't take me into consideration when drawing up the seating plans.
Let's pull focus on that phrasal verb, to draw up. This is a key piece of formal vocabulary. To draw up means to write and prepare a formal document or a detailed plan.
Right, like a legal contract or a budget.
Or, in this case, a seating plan.
And the seating plan, for anyone who hasn't been to a very structured wedding, is essential. It's the board showing exactly which table every guest is assigned to. It dictates the entire social structure of the meal.
The fact that she wasn't included in the drawing up of that plan becomes, in her mind, the ultimate evidence of exclusion. It justifies everything. She sees her name is on the list, and that's the evidence for her conclusion.
Moving on to number 12, it seems to me that
This is a neutral phrase, maybe leaning a bit formal, that offers a conclusion based on careful, measured observation. It feels a little more reasoned than, as far as I can tell.
our example shows her judging the reaction of the other guests, which was not good. It seems to me that everyone overreacted when I tried to sit at the top table. And here the social transgression just reaches its absolute peak. We have to detail the top table. For our listeners, the top table is the power center of the reception. It's long, it's often elevated, and it overlooks all the guest tables. It seats only the most important people, the couple, their parents, the main bridal party.
Trying to sit there, uninvited and several drinks deep, is the ultimate breach of conduct. It's like walking onto the stage at the opera and demanding a microphone.
Yet she, using the reason structure, it seems to me that, concludes that the reaction of everyone else, the people who planned and paid for this, was the real problem.
Her perception is totally warped, but the language frames her as the reasonable party analyzing the hysterical reactions of others.
Next up, a very simple and common one. Great for softening a strong statement. I would say, or just I'd say.
A very smooth alternative. It carries a lighter, less definitive weight than the formal options. Easy to drop into conversation when you want to offer an opinion without committing too heavily.
The ex continues her critique of the wedding. I'd say the food was very good, but it was a shame I had to share it with my neighbor, which gives us another subtle linguistic point about the word neighbor. In this context, especially in British English, it often just means the person sitting right next to you at a table.
Exactly. She's complaining about the physical proximity of a stranger, suggesting she deserved a whole table to herself. It just further establishes her delusion of importance.
And finally, in this section, a phrase that requires a specific grammatical structure, forcing a kind of analytical precision, I consider to be.
This is a really robust and powerful phrase because it forces you to present your opinion as a definitive, considered judgment. The structure is fixed. I consider something to be an adjective. It implies a deliberate mental weighing process has happened.
She turns her frustration into a formal indictment with this precise structure. I consider it to be very rude that I was forced to sit down when I stood up to make a speech.
A magnificent moment. Here we have an uninvited guest, not on the speaker list, standing up to give an uninvited speech, only to be restrained. Yet she uses this highly structured phrase to classify the restraint, the completely justified defense of the event, as the rude act.
The formality of I consider to be is used to justify a complete absence of social awareness. Okay, we've reached the final set of alternatives. These are distinct because they tap directly into the speaker's internal state, their deep conviction, their moral belief, their raw emotion.
These are the phrases you use when you want the audience to understand that your opinion is rooted in something stronger than just rationality. It's about the emotional source of the statement.
Starting with two extremely simple, reliable one-word replacements for I think when you're in a pinch. I believe and I feel that.
Invaluable tools. If you need to express certainty from a moral or rational framework, use I believe. If you want to introduce an emotional, subjective layer, use I feel.
The X uses I believe to argue for her entitlement. I believe they should have just made space for me in the first place. That is pure conviction, a non-negotiable truth for her. And she uses "I feel" to express her personal disappointment with the bride. I feel that my ex could have found a more welcoming bride with a better sense of humor. Purely subjective emotion, bitterness and judgment.
The simple choice between believe and feel lets you instantly define the source of your opinion, whether it's rationalized conviction or raw emotional reaction.
Next, we take that conviction up a notch by adding an intensifier. I honestly believe that.
Yeah, adding honestly heightens the sense of conviction dramatically. It suggests the speaker has checked this thought against their own moral standards and found it to be absolutely true, even if everyone else disagrees. It adds weight and sincerity.
Our ex uses this heightened conviction to justify her next destructive act, the unauthorized dismantling of the wedding cake. I honestly believe that if I hadn't started cutting the cake, no one would have. We have to pause here. The ceremonial cutting of the wedding cake is this iconic photo op. The bride and groom hold the knife together, they make the first cut. It symbolizes their shared future. It is absolutely not an activity for a rogue, gin-soaked ex to just jump in and start.
Yet she uses "I honestly believe that" to internalize this idea that she was performing a necessary function, that she was filling a vacuum. Her conviction in the necessity of her transgression is complete.
Moving back to the informal side, we have "honestly speaking."
This is a classic transitional phrase, often used to introduce a candid, maybe self-critical or even confessional opinion. It's less about justifying and more about acknowledging reality, sometimes as a prelude to an apology.
In our continuing saga, the ex finally shows a sliver of self-awareness after the cake incident. Honestly speaking, I probably shouldn't have thrown my slice at the bride.
That phrase, honestly speaking, signals to the listener, okay, I'm dropping the pretense now and offering you the most truthful thing I've said all day. Even if the apology is incredibly weak, probably shouldn't have.
Finally, we arrive at the last of the 21 phrases, one used for group discussions. Personally speaking.
This is a really robust, neutral phrase. It's highly effective when you're part of a group, but you need to clearly differentiate your own opinion from the general agreement. It centers the statement entirely on your individual viewpoint.
And the final act of this absurd drama, which has involved trespassing, interruption, and culinary assault, requires the most severe response. The ex delivers her final judgment. Personally speaking, calling the police was a bit OTT.
And here we define the final piece of slang. OTT, an extremely common English abbreviation for over the top. It just means too much, excessive, unwarranted.
So she considers the reaction of the wedding party calling law enforcement after a full day of chaos to be an excessive reaction.
Yes. And by using personally speaking, she differentiates her view from what was clearly the group consensus. She subtly minimizes the seriousness of her own actions and shifts the blame back onto the people who were just trying to regain control of their own wedding. So we've now gone through all 21 alternatives, and if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the major takeaway is that these alternatives let you organize your opinions into 3 clear categories: informal slang, neutral observational, and formal judicial. The key for you, the learner, is understanding that true sophistication isn't measured by the length of the words you use, but by the specificity of the phrase you choose. You have to pick a phrase that accurately reflects the level of confidence or evidence or the emotional source of your opinion. That conscious choice is what takes you from a functional speaker to an advanced communicator.
Before we do our final fun review of the saga, we promised a powerful learning tool, a meta tip for making these 21 phrases and every other complex English word stick. This is a nugget from our sources. It's just vital for non-native English learners.
We mentioned earlier that English is not strictly phonetic. Reading alone will only teach you how to spell a word, not how it sounds. So, the recommended method for improving both listening and pronunciation at the same time is a dual sensory approach.
Okay, let's unpack this. You need to be reading a book in English while at the exact same moment listening to the professional audiobook version.
This creates a unique cognitive lock. Your brain is forced to connect the visual data, the spelling, the silent letters, with the correct auditory data, the actual pronunciation.
This is where the aha moment hits. You might see the word colonel and think it sounds like colonel. But when you hear the audiobook say colonel, your brain is immediately forced to reconcile the written word with the sound.
And by forcing your brain to create that bridge, you solve 2 problems at once. You make both spelling recall and pronunciation much stronger. This method is incredibly effective for mastering a complex, non-phonetic language like English.
Now, let's solidify that learning by revisiting the entire glorious, ridiculous narrative. We're running through all 21 points in order, turning chaos into coherence, exactly as the source intended. Listen for how the emotional state escalates.
It begins with that initial emotional reaction, delivered casually. NGL, I was pretty insulted to not be invited to my ex-boyfriend's wedding.
She then transitions to her justification for attending. In all honesty, I had every right to be there.
She confesses to the specific factor that started her chaotic slide using that great British slang. I reckon the 6th gin and tonic tipped me over the edge.
She offers her first judgment on the ceremony as unsolicited advice. If you ask me, the church service was wonderful, but it was a shame I had to stand at the back.
She notes the bride's reaction, framing it as an observational conclusion with limited evidence. As far as I can tell, the bride wasn't really expecting me.
Then she delivers her final, non-negotiable judgment on the bride's reaction. As far as I'm concerned, she totally overreacted and shouldn't have cried. She uses that simple, direct replacement to justify her unique authority. To me, no one knows my ex better than I do, so I should have been able to tell all of his funny stories.
She provides a formal, intellectual defense of her actions. In my view, I should have been invited, so it was totally fair for me to turn up on the day.
This leads to the more cerebral justification for the bride's lack of welcome. To my mind, she should have been happier to see me and receive my support.
She delivers her personal take on the entertainment, justifying her interruption. From my point of view, the first dance was cringeworthy, so I did everyone a favor by joining in.
She uses that highest formal structure to shift blame to the wedding's generosity. It is my view that the open bar made everything worse.
She provides a strong statement of conviction to argue her right to be there. It is my belief that they should have just made space for me in the first place.
Her self-assessment of the photos is framed as her interpretation of reality. The way I see things, I made the family photographs a lot more interesting.
She addresses the snub of the dinner plans, using that visual filter. As I see it, they obviously didn't take me into consideration when drawing up the seating plans.
Her attempt to crash the top table results in a judgment on the other guests. It seems to me that everyone overreacted when I tried to sit at the top table.
She offers a simple conversational critique of the meal. I'd say the food was very good, but it was a shame I had to share it with my neighbor.
Her restraint is framed as a serious, considered judgment on the party's rudeness. I consider it to be very rude that I was forced to sit down when I stood up to make a speech.
She uses her highest conviction to justify cutting the cake. I honestly believe that if I hadn't started cutting the cake, no one would have.
She offers that single, informal moment of regret for the violence that followed. Honestly speaking, I probably shouldn't have thrown my slice at the bride.
She expresses her emotional disappointment with the entire marriage. I feel that my ex could have found a more welcoming bride with a better sense of humor.
And finally, her self-centered judgment on the necessary consequence. Personally speaking, calling the police was a bit OTT. That entire saga is just a testament to the source material's creator. You now have 21 indelible examples anchored to an unforgettable sequence of events. You will not forget why you use I consider over I think now. #Hag outro.
So if we pull back, the final lessons from this material are absolutely critical for anyone focused on mastering high-level communication. First, remember that true vocabulary sophistication is achieved through specificity. It means rejecting the easy synonym and selecting the precise structure that conveys the nature of your opinion, conviction, analysis, or emotion. That deliberate choice is what elevates your communication.
And the second core lesson, which is the key to applying all of this, is the proven effectiveness of multisensory learning. Use that dual input method, reading the text while listening to the audio. For a language like English, it forces your brain to build those high-speed connections between the written word and its correct pronunciation,
Leading to massive long-term fluency gains.
So what does this intensive deep dive mean for you right now? We've given you 21 precise tools to sound smarter, more authoritative, and more articulate. But knowledge without application is just high-level trivia. So here is your challenge. I want you to look at the communication you engage in today. Think about your work emails, your text to friends, the discussions you'll have this week. Choose just one formal phrase, maybe it is my view that, and one informal phrase, perhaps NGL, from this list, and just commit to substituting those two alternatives for I think the very next time you can. That instant application is the only way to ensure this deep dive truly sticks and becomes part of your core lexicon. Good luck and happy vocabulary leveling. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.